data, please first think about the underlying human foundations. Think of openness and what the barriers, opportunities, and needs are likely to be before you embark on a project. The chances that what you will produce will be more useful are greatly increased if you can work out these issues beforehand. There are no quick wins when it comes to institutional change. It takes time. Instilling a culture of openness in the way that institutions and people operate is something that we have to look at over a long period of time. But in the development sector especially, and the theme of this conference and my background, this is what needs to happen if we as a community really want to have an impact on how public policy is formed and how data is treated as a service and public good in our communities of the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tom. You turned the lights on. Thank you. So next is Edna Karamagi. Please take the podium.
The slides, please.
Please say next or slides
Slides.
on.
I need the slides running, please.
Do we have another speaker who doesn't need a slide?
Maybe we get another slide person to talk. It's okay? Okay.
Okay. Someone brave enough to come and talk without a slide? Wow.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Edna Karamagi, and I'm from Uganda Meat Producers Cooperative Union. I'm going to share with you my story and something that I've learned here during the past 3 days that I've been here. Now, I come from a cooperative setting, and within a cooperative setting, it's very close. Those of you who are familiar, if you look at the chart up there, you will find that our highest entity is the AGM. From the AGM, they select 9 committee members who represent them at different stakeholder meetings. And then from there, we have the secretariat that comes down. Now, what happens, the best way I could describe this to you is, say, for instance, amongst my roles is looking for funds for the institution. Now, if I want to get funds, if I'm looking for funds for the institution, I don't just wake up one morning and say, oh, maybe European Union has advertised, let me go for it. No, it doesn't work that way. I have got to write out the concept, pass it on to the head of the secretariat, who is the CEO, and then the CEO has got to pass it on to the executive. The executive sits once every quarter, and that's a very costly activity for them to sit. The AGM sits once a year. So if a fund comes in between and the expiry date is before the next executive, we have got to miss it. That is how a cooperative works, because a cooperative union is, it is member-driven by cooperative societies. They own it and they make decisions about what goes on. If you make a decision on your own at the secretariat level, you can be sued by the cooperative societies. Next slide, please. Now, if I look at a glance, just a quick brief about what we do. Our main focus is to improve the breed. Within improving the breed, we also look at the quality of meat. We would like to improve and end up with high quality of meat at the end of the day. We also look at food security. Now, it's interesting, with food security, we look at food security, we look at nutrition, we look at the amount of food and the availability, not just to the human beings, that's the cattle keepers, but also to the animal as well, the animal that they are keeping. Then we look at increasing incomes and the climate aspect, because you know with livestock farmers, they can very easily degrade the whole land through overgrazing and deforestation activities. Now, we also, if you understand the cattle keeping sector, you will find that there are certain groups that are really not welcome on board. And these are the groups that we try to bring on board because they are vital as well. We look at the gender component, we look at the youth inclusion as well. We also look at the locally developed practices. That's very key to us. We also concentrate on smallholder agriculture and rural livelihoods. That's our center. Now, next slide, please. Now, the problem that I had when I just joined, I'm just about 6 months into the institution. One was organized information sharing to them is new. It is something that hasn't been existing, and they never ever in their wildest of dreams imagined it would ever exist. Second is you find the farmers, these farmers have got acres and acres of land. So if you're to bring them together to share content, when you're collecting the content from them, you will find that a farmer has got to walk 5 to 10 kilometers to reach the venue because they've got huge farms in Beitwen. Next is to them a telephone. The only IT method that they talk about is a telephone. And to them a telephone is just for phone calls and messages. So we introduced the WhatsApp content, but even when we introduce the WhatsApp, we still have resistance in there. They have a very strong culture. The more the cows, the more respected you are in the community. If you are a person who has only 10 cows, you cannot stand and oppose what someone who has 1,000 cows has said. It doesn't matter whether his cows are malnutritioned or not. You cannot do that because you have very few cows. And then they also have the gender aspect. The females have got their own roles that they do. It is so interesting. I'll share with you an example. One time we wanted to buy ghee from one of the farmers. They were going to have a meeting. So we asked the farmer, the cooperator, to please ask his wife to give us ghee, and we were going to pay. Total, we were going to pay about $27 for the ghee that he was bringing. He refused to bring it. He needs the money, but he won't bring it. Why? Because ghee is a female activity. No man is going to demean him to be seen carrying ghee around, but he needs the money. You get? So that's how they think. And now, when I came on board, because I am from a background where open data, we've been using open data for so many years, over 15 years. So to me, I thought that this was going to be the same thing, and it would be an easy push through. So I came very assumptuous. One, I hit a block, and the block that I hit was in the way, the hierarchy of permission to implement a certain activity. Second was the perception, the individual perception of the people themselves. To them, they don't look at it that way. And then I also thought that, well, this is my job role. I could implement it and move on. At the end of the day, they did not adopt it. They did not understand it. Even the staff themselves did not understand it. They were stuck, totally stuck. So when it came to open data, yes, we were moving, but to me, we were moving at a very slow pace. Good enough, this conference came up, and when the conference came up in the last 3 days, I have been having several discussions with different people. I was sponsored by Gordon to come here, thank you. And in my concentration during the sessions, I have been trying to find out how can I break through. And everybody went back, actually all the comments I got went back to the original. Please take me to the next slide. Next slide, please. That's the solution. If I want to travel far, first I'm going to go alone. But if I want to travel far, I have got to go with my friends, with my colleagues. So to me, this is a very strong take back for me. I need to go back and understand. The previous presenter talked about the human entity before the data. I need to go back and concentrate on the human entity. When I get the human entity on board, then I can get to the data component. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So it goes back to the song this morning, right? The more we are together. What's an audience? The more we are together. If you don't sing it, I won't continue. The more we are together.
Together.
The farther we go. The more we are together.
Thank you.
If you want to go far, if you want to go fast, okay, so we want to go far with open data, so we go together. So I'm going to invite the next speaker, Chaya Yayak, to take the stage. Sorry, I'm bad with names, pronunciations.
I also have a presentation, so I'll wait until it's able to bit. There we go. Great. So my name is Chaya, and I'm a public policy research manager at Facebook, and I lead our Data for Good program. Today, what I'm going to talk about is a bit about the Data for Good programs that we currently have, as well as the principles that we've been following as we've thought about building this program. The first principle I want to talk about is the principle of partnership. Facebook works with two partners, OECD and the World Bank, on a Future of Business survey that I'd love to talk a little bit more about. So the Future of Business survey, what we decided to do about a year and a half ago was think through a way that Facebook could contribute to the world of businesses and understanding businesses better, to help governments, to help organizations, and to help the businesses themselves grow. And when we first started to think about how we can make an impact in the field of measuring business success and optimism, what we realized was that we're not the experts on how to actually do this measurement, but we actually did have a really great platform that could be used, Facebook. There are a ton of businesses on Facebook that have pages, that use pages to get to people who they want to sell to, who they want to do business with, potentially trade with. And we really wanted to get a sense of what we could do in order to reach those businesses. And so we developed a survey with the OECD and the World Bank. Our two partners actually helped us develop the questions, and we actually build this survey every month. Can you actually go back? I'm sorry. Okay, great. And so basically what we're doing here is 42 countries every month we survey, and we partnered with the OECD and World Bank to build the survey questionnaire. And we ask things to businesses like, are they optimistic about the economy? Where do they think the economy is going to go in 6 months? What kinds of jobs they're going to build? And we offer this data open source on the futureofbusiness.org. And this is something that we found that partnership really was the key. We wouldn't have been able to actually have a highly impactful survey if we didn't partner with the OECD and World Bank on getting this survey out and delivered on the ground. All right, go ahead. So this video should start playing. The second kind of key message that I'd want to say is foundational to Facebook's Data for Good program is the concept of creativity. Now, when Facebook started to build Data for Good, we started to think about what we could actually give to society that would be helpful. And we came to thinking about our technology. Facebook has amazing artificial intelligence technology. And we thought, what if we apply it to satellite imagery in order to create really highly dense and accurate population density maps that actually show where populations are located, where settlements exist, and so we can rethink the way that we think about where populations reside. The video that I just showed gave you an example of the population density maps and what was the previous state of the art. So usually it was National Statistic Office census collection that were kind of situated on large administrative boundaries. And what the video had showed was that you can actually get to the level of a settlement and then start to interpolate population based on that level. And so for us, it was really being creative about the technology that we have and repurposing it to actually look at satellite imagery and identify and do pattern detection to identify new settlements and populations across the world. The third concept that I'd love to talk about is, this is still along the same lines. So just an example of how this data is used. Our partners at the Red Cross actually used the population density data in Malawi during a measles and rubella vaccination campaign, where the population density maps helped them move from having to cover 100% of the total population in the area. But instead of having to cover 100% of land cover, they were actually able to cut out 97% of land area and focus on 3%, where they knew that populations were actually residing in rural areas, to help them vaccinate at a more effective rate. And it really helped them focus their time on reaching the people, which I think was a message that resonated well from the previous speaker. All right, let's go ahead to the next slide. So the third piece I'd love to talk about, you can actually go back, that was a video. Oh, yep, that's perfect, that should start playing. So the third piece I'd love to talk about is, oh, let's see if it comes up. Can you go back one more time and see if it will play? Sorry, go back one more slide. Yeah, that's a video and it should play, hopefully, unless it got stuck. There we go. Okay, so the third project I'd like to talk about, again, speaks on the importance of building interoperable data sets with the end user in mind. One thing that we announced in June earlier this year was our work to actually start sharing Facebook data with organizations in what we hope will be a responsible and open way. What we're building is disaster maps data sets. So we're providing organizations information on where people are moving, where they reside, and where they're checking in safe during a natural disaster like an earthquake or a fire or a flood. And what we hope is that this will help humanitarian organizations better allocate services to the community in order to actually figure out where people need the resources when something critical like an earthquake has happened. And the final piece that I'd love to talk about as a premise to the roundtable that I'll be doing later today is our work on insights for impact. So the message I have here is that when you do data work, what you really have to do is get the right message to the right people at the right time. And that's something that we realized from our platform on Facebook, where ads users or commercial companies will actually use ads on Facebook to get the right message to people so that they can buy products. What we realized was that the same technology could actually be used by organizations like UNICEF in this case, where we see that we could actually apply some of the same ad targeting to sending a message around Zika to populations in Brazil in order to help them understand the implications of the Zika virus in the community. And so what we did was we targeted a message, and you can see it on the screen. We did a little bit of research on who was actually more likely to talk about Zika on Facebook. And the surprising fact that we found was men were actually more likely to talk about Zika, even though it was a disease that would affect women. And so we targeted a message to men, and they were able to project that into the community, reaching over 4 million people in the first hours from 60,000, which is a huge jump, so 60 to 4 million. And if we go to the next slide, what we can see is when we measured the lift, or the number of people saying that this actually made them take action in their community, we saw a 3% change of people saying, yes, I'm going to actually take action in my community because of this message. And if you would actually look at that in terms of a population, what you'd understand is 3% could actually mean millions and millions of people who now understand Zika. And so with that, I think I'd love to kind of just very subtly announce that we're doing a similar project here in the region. We're actually working with the Nigerian CDC on a project around meningitis awareness, following the very same principles. And so we're super excited to continue this work, and I think the three messages I have is partnership is key, creativity is key, and get the right message to the right people while making data interoperable and open along the way. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Shaya. Is Carol Ndosi in the room, please? Carol Ndosi from D-Lab, Tanzania. Okay, please take the podium, please. You're the next speaker. Oh, you're not Carol. You need to say something. So I will now invite Desi Lopez. Thank you. Desi Lopez, slide, please.
Okay, so good morning. Peter Senge, one of the leading thinkers about systems thinking, came up with this quote where he said that today's problems come from yesterday's solutions. And the point, can I have the next slide please, is that when we think about open data, or the way that I was looking at it, I immediately branched over to systems thinking because of the similarities that you find across. Where if you look at the goals of open data, it's to improve efficiencies and synergies, to have interoperability, and therefore you need standardization. If you look at systems thinking, a system really is you as an organism, but it is the planet as well and everything in between. And the goal is, or a system has a goal or a purpose. The system is bigger than the sum of its parts. The parts are interdependent, and no part can take an independent decision. That's the definition of a system. So if you think of your human body, you know, the hearts and the lungs have to work in sync. Otherwise, you know, there's no homeostasis or there's no balance, and then the system will take action to bring the balance back. If you think about systems thinking, the important thing about the system is not just the elements that compose of the system, but it is the links between. And so this interoperability that you are looking at from an open data perspective, you know, ties back into this, what we use the term feedback, that one element provides to the next. Can I have the next slide, please? Can I have the next? Yes. So here's an example of how we look at, in this case, a problem of understanding how you move from blaming to accountability. So if you start at the top, where you see in blue it says blame, as blame goes up, the S's stand for same direction and O stands for opposite direction. So if you go from blame to, then, you know, blame goes up, fear goes up. And as fear goes up, then people start to cover up themselves more. And if that happens, then information flow will drop. And if that drops, then our current understanding of the reality will come down as well. As a result, our ability to resolve problems effectively will also come down. Now, the outer circle is also true. When fear goes up, our willingness to take risk will come down. And then our ability to innovate comes down. And then, again, our ability to resolve problems effectively will go further down. Can I have the next slide? This is a visual on what we call mental data, mental models, sorry. So there is data available, whether it's open or not, but there is data available. Then we observe the data with our senses. Then we apply filters, because typically what the human condition is oftentimes so that when we see something, we will be looking for data to support our thoughts. And we will exclude the data that are kind of contradictory to it, unless you're a researcher and you're trained to do the opposite. Then, because of the filters that we apply, then we start adding meaning to it. And that meaning can be cultural, it can be personal, based on your education level or your experience level. And then you start to conclude based on that. Now, the conclusions then will be adopted in what we call beliefs about the reality, and those beliefs then will provoke actions. Now, there's two loops here as well. Because of your beliefs, you will then, next time when you look at data, make yet another set of selections from the data. And so that is kind of and based on the actions that you take at the top, you know, other situations will present themselves, and therefore other data will come about. And so again, you're setting yourself up for something. So, can I have the next slide? This is an example of what I mean with a mental model. When I was working for a US corporation, I had to explain why I needed 2 offices in South Africa, because nobody understood why that was, because they had a mental model about Africa that wasn't coherent with reality. And so, as a result, putting up a slide like this was very helpful. Who were making, you know, decisions at headquarters and didn't have a passport. So with these kind of data, you can actually, you know, stir up and clean up the mental model that is stuck in people's minds. Can I have the next slide? Okay, so to sum it up, access to or having access to open data will greatly improve our ability to include the open data into our feedback. And as I said before, if you think about systems, you know, if you think, for instance, about having data available for Ghana, yesterday or the day before yesterday, there was a gentleman who made a very, you know, relative remark where he said, you know, when people are looking for data for Ghana, they will probably go to the World Bank to find the data there. Why wouldn't they come to Ghana for the data? Wouldn't it be better? Should Ghana not have more granular data? But because of the fact that sometimes the data sit in silos and some of the data are contradictory, people tend to be, you know, skeptical whether the data is reliable or not, and so they prefer to go to something that they think is better equipped, you know, an institution like the World Bank. So these black arrows are the feedbacks, and as I said before, the feedback is what will drive the behavior of a system. So when you are, so my appeal to you is that when you start thinking about your open data, please think not just about the data of the elements, but also think about the data that connect the elements. Because that is really, really important, because that is what will drive behavior. So when you think about your Ghanaian data, think about the possibility that you are part of the planet, and some researcher somewhere down in Australia may want to be interested in Ghana's data. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm a Sierra Leonean, a West African, and an African. Did you get that? I'm a Sierra Leonean, a West African, and an African. Okay, that will keep you thinking about. So the next speaker is Pauline. The last name, I can't pronounce it, I'm sorry. Lanhaf.
I have a terribly complicated surname, that's fine. Oh, thanks. So food security is a major challenge, and I always think about open data as a means to solve it. I'm going to talk about this today. My name is Pauline Lenaf. I work for the Open Data Institute, and I work there as a project manager. We are co-leading a project that is called Code and Action, together with Wageningen Research, which is based in the Netherlands, and a whole lot of different partners. It's funded by the UK Department for International Development, DFID, and it actually complements the great work that GODAN as a massive network is doing with organizations working in open data and agriculture and nutrition. So I just want to quickly talk about the objectives of the project and why we would actually need you to keep working on it. You can click once more if you want, or twice actually, whenever you want to click. So why GODAN Action is important? The general objective is to help solving food security and nutrition challenges using open data. In other words, to improve security, to improve nutrition for consumers and develop better decision making. So the idea is to work on a better access and a better use of data, especially in developing countries. So I'm just going to tell you about what we started doing, and especially we would need you around weather data. And I'm just going to, you're going to see on the different slides, like you see the website that you can access to have more information, and the email address that you can get in contact with. That's my working in the Netherlands. So what do we do and why? We focus on 3 key areas. You can click if you want once more. It's around facilitating the use of standards, researching the impacts, and building the capacity of a network of actors. Thank you. So why standards? Standards make it easier for people to publish and to use data. It increases interoperability. You can imagine it as tracks for trains, because you need standardized tracks to travel in order to avoid frictions in the system and in the network. So it's exactly the same for data, because you need those standards in order to compare the data, aggregate it, create new tools and systems around it. So we're currently working, oh, you went too far, sorry, can you go back? So we're currently, thank you. So we're currently working on guidelines and recommendations around standards. Then impact, second point here. We're currently working on methodologies and tools to measure impact of the use of open data in this area, especially in developing countries. And the last one is capacity building, because when you talk about a subject that is still very technical, you need people to own it and to be able to understand it and spread the word. So we're working on online courses and face-to-face training. There was actually a face-to-face training delivered by CTA, one of the partners of the project, earlier this week here in Accra. Yeah, next one, please. So the project is structured around 3 main topics. It's more than 3 years. And we're working on those topics in order to make sure that we're working on areas with high relevance, with high impacts, and to put research into practice. You can click once more, please. So we're working on three main topics then: weather data, land data, and nutrition data. And so this year, you can click once more, this year we're working specifically on weather data because it's really key for optimizing farm management and optimizing farm advisory services. It's even more powerful when you actually link it with other types of data. You can click once more. And once more, next slide, the last slide, please. So the reason why I'm here today is to ask you for your help. You can click, yeah, and one last time. Because we need new ideas, we need new examples around weather data. So if you work on it, if you know projects around this topic, please visit the website that you can see on the slide, and please contact my colleague Rob Lockers, because we would need your help to keep this project successful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pauline. So I learned a new name today, and we learned about Gordon. Next speaker is Roger Akrong. I hope I got that right. Please take the podium. Thank you.
Hi, morning. My name is Roger Akrong. I work for GCNet, and we're excited to be here to be part of this conversation. The hope for us is that we can propel this endeavor to some very good conclusion. So I'm going to be speaking on open data in a single window environment, but I'm focusing on security. And of course, when it comes to security, most of the time the feeling is, oh, it's those guys who say, don't do it, don't touch that, don't go here. But in actual fact, security can become quite an enabler, allowing you to get your risks out of the way and giving you the freedom to pursue the open data goals that you wish to pursue. Please, next slide. Now, GCNet is a company who's heavily invested in the maturity of e-governance in Ghana. Next slide. We have services that currently enable governments to do trade facilitation, revenue mobilization. Next slide. And we interface currently with lots of people who you would agree would traditionally hold lots of data in many silos. And so the incentive for us is to try and ensure that we can bring this data into the open to be used profitably. Please. Now, this is a long list of people or agencies that we currently interface with. All right. It's a very long list, and it's growing steadily. Your Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Trade, Foreign Affairs, National Communications Authority, the Animal Production Directorate, Ghana Revenue Authority, Energy Commission, the list speaks for itself. You can imagine the kind of synergy that can be created if these institutions, and this is not an exhaustive list, are able to collaborate and produce open data which is useful. Next slide. Now this is blank for a reason. Why open data? Now if you've been here this past week, you would have heard many, many reasons why open data. So I will not bore you with the list, but I'll give you my reason. Startups. People characterize startups as lots of things. A leap of faith, testing the depth of water with both feet, living by faith and not by sight. Now, really, startups have lots of apprehensions. It's almost as if you are jumping from a place of comfort to a place of uncertainty. But open data is the one thing, well, I won't say it's the one thing, it's one of the things that can actually make that leap of faith a little less daunting. And when we say a little less daunting, it's less daunting for the people making the leap of faith themselves, young entrepreneurs, students. And it's also less daunting for those who supply the mentorship and the funding for these startups. So if you ask me, is it the right time for us to do this? Is it the right time? I would say definitely yes. Now, think about it. The president was here, His Excellency Nana Addo. He spoke about the innovation hub. All right, there is $100 million funding which has been made available for entrepreneurs and innovators under your National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Plan. Imagine how much further this 100 million would go if we've got open data. I mean, take a small pause to imagine. Now, let's come to the big question. Can we be secure and open all in one breath? It seems like apples and oranges. Now, if you look at open data, in its nature, it is begging for freedom. Okay? Freely used, freely modified, shared. Anyone can have access for any purpose. And on the flip side, if you look at secure data, it is protected. It has all these labels of confidentiality. It says, do not modify me, do not share me until and unless you've got explicit permission to. So it seems like there's a big mismatch. Can you actually live in a world where the thing is open and yet secure? Now, I dare say yes, you can. Now, let's look at the three things that security is about. And of course, I'm a part of the security fraternity in GCNet, so we look generally at confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So I'll pick all of them, and let's talk through them. Now, confidentiality, open data, how does that work? Sometimes, in fact, most of the time, before the data goes from secure data to assume an open nature, it has to be anonymized. All right, you have to make sure you're not sharing people's personal information. So when we talk about confidentiality, it's ensuring that what eventually ends up in the hands of users is devoid of confidential information. There's issues of integrity. Imagine if you had an app which is relying on open data, which has very tangible and serious outcomes, say for some sort of medical research. And the data itself that is accessed initially doesn't have a high level of integrity. Now, that lack of integrity cascades downwards towards the actual usage. So integrity is also another issue. And then there's availability. We, most of the time, don't see availability as a matter of security, but it is. Accustomed to having a certain amount of data, accustomed to having a certain amount of access, and then suddenly it is not available. So security also looks at how do you ensure that the data is available as and when it is required. Now, let's move forward. My senior in InfoSec, Mr. Saki, who's at GCNet as well, talked about IT governance. I'm going to zero in on a very small portion, which is the risk and mitigation portion of IT governance. All all right? Now, look at this list. Risk can be seen as an opportunity. So if you're here today, you're going to see a long list of risks. Don't for a moment feel as though these are showstoppers or barriers. Actually, what it is an opportunity to deal with the barriers before they come up so that we can freely cruise towards our objective. So we'll rush through some of them. Publishing data in contravention with laws. If you've got a Data Protection Act binding whatever jurisdiction you function in, when you're publishing open data, you need to be aware of its requirements. Revealing trade secrets. Sometimes in publishing open data, you inadvertently release somebody's intellectual property. PII and privacy infringements. Same data protection. There's government security infrastructure risk. Now, think about this. You're sharing data about your Ministry of Energy and its endeavors. That's a secure infrastructure. How do you ensure that the data that you are sharing doesn't create security problems for a country? Okay. Publication of improper data, publication of inaccurate data. There's a nice long list. Misinterpretation, unavailability, increased requests for data. That's an availability issue. So think about a situation where your data is so much in demand that everybody wants access to it, and if not well managed, if the availability is not well managed, you create a sort of a legitimate denial of service situation. All right. My personal favorite, the mosaic effect. Now, we say we're anonymizing data. Okay, before we make it open, we anonymize it. Now, think about a situation where I pick data from the Social Security Agency, I pick data from the Ministry of Trade, and I pick data from, say, the Ministry of Health. And then putting that data together, I reconstruct what should have been hidden or what should have been anonymized in the data. That is another risk that you need to look at. Now, there's issues of stale data, okay? Data that is open should be dynamic in nature, because sometimes you just don't want information as in a point in time, but you want delta, change from a certain point to another. So if the data is stale, it gives you a very lopsided view of whatever there is. There's cyber attack and so on. Now let's talk about mitigation. That long list of things, long list of risks, I call them opportunities to get going. And these are some of the things you can do to mitigate some of those risks. You can use secure APIs. You can use a secure DMZ. Now, a DMZ is a demilitarized zone. We borrowed it from the military. An area of relative peace where there's chaos. There's business continuity. There's validity at entry, validation. Okay. The data that's coming into the system itself from the get-go should be validated. All right. There's separation of open and closed data. There's a few others. I am sure this slide will be available to conference attendants, so I won't go through all of it. But let's pick one. And let's do a risk assessment. Now, you've got open data. This open data is exposed to a risk of separation of open and closed data. So this is a risk, okay? In mitigating this, you use a secure DMZ. I'm going to go a bit technical on you, but I'm trying to make this as easy as humanly possible. So let's see what the next slide does. Now, what is a DMZ? This is a data center. Your data center is broken into two parts. Well, there may be more parts, but for this explanation, let's assume that it's broken into two parts. One part, which is in blue, is called your DMZ. This is where there's relative peace. Okay. Now, in the other part of your data center, you've got secure data, which is why it has a key on it, and you've got your open data. Now, remember, we're trying to deal with the issue of separating secure data from open data, all right? Now, also in your data center, you have some device which allows you to connect to the two types of data that you have in the back end. All right, so you've got your internet. Now, please progress. So we've got a user rushing all the way to access our open data. Now, this user makes an attempt to access open data. Now, once he does this, he will be stopped by most likely a firewall in your data center which says, okay, now here, you want open data. Let us check to see if indeed you are going to get it. So it says, if you're trying to access closed data, you are not allowed. You can't go there. But if you're trying to access open data, we will grant you access. Okay? So at this point, the data returns through whichever device is granting access, which is publicly accessible to the user. Now, this data center structure is a bit technical in nature, okay, but this is how agencies would actually mitigate the risks. And this is a conversation that can be expanded beyond the walls of this conference, all in a view to move us forward as to the tangibles. What are we going to do operationally to allow us to reach a point where we're able to share our data openly and without worrying about risks? Now, if you look at this cycle actually shows you how data is treated. We are very, very interested in the sharing portion, because for us, at the point where data has been used, say by a ministry, a department, an agency, the next thing that we want to happen is for the data to be shared. So we're going to propose an approach. And fortunately, the conversations I have had in this conference have gone to buttress this approach, that there will be centralization and a centralized management. So imagine that we have an agency, and this agency holds secure data. It hands the secure data to what I have named an open data hub. Now, this open data hub will be a collection of people, processes, and technology. And most likely, these people should come from all the agencies that want to share data. So what happens is that at this central point, the data is opened, the data is applied, data governance is applied, quality assurance is applied, redundancy is applied, it is cleaned up, and security is applied. And the output of that process will be your open data. All right. So all these risk mitigation approaches that we've spoken about need to be able to map onto these principles, the principles of our Open Data Charter. And once it does that, we're okay. Now, the next and final slide. The first speaker was talking about a feeling. Now, this is my feeling. We need open data utopia. It says that dreams are realities in waiting. In dreams, we plant the seeds of our future. So, despite the fact that this is not an easy endeavor, it is worth doing. And we at GCNet are excited to be a part of this process, and we would very much like to encourage the process with our technical know-how and with collaboration with all agencies, as well as the National IT Authority and everybody else who wants to be part of this open data revolution. Thank you for your time. I hope it wasn't too long.
Thank you, GCNet. You have a dream, and we are believers. Do you believe? Yes. So if you believe, put your hand on your heart. Are you not doing it? I'm a strict school teacher. And say, I believe. Somebody's not doing it? I believe. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, our final speaker, Evans Owusu. I think I can pronounce that. Evans Owusu.
Hello, good morning. The name is Evans Owusu. Thank you. I'm Ivan Sousu, and I'm from the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences. It's a Pan-African Institute for Mathematical Sciences where students are trained to use mathematics to solve Africans' problems. And as part of my research work towards my MSc, I worked on satellite data on radiation. Please, a slide. Please go back. Okay. Next slide, please. One will ask, why satellite data on radiation? Think about this, 100 million. 100 million. On the order of magnitude, 100 million, no matter what it's referring to, is quite huge. And it's not, I'm not talking about $100 million or 100 million pounds. Sadly enough, the 100 million is the total number of people that the United Nations has estimated that they will suffer from severe hunger. And as part of that, my aim was to see how best Ghana will form part of this solution. Now, the satellite data on radiation came into place because from the map over there, traditionally in Ghana, the mode of collecting weather and climatic information is through the weather stations. But these weather stations, no matter how many they are in the country, are always not enough for the purpose for which we want to use them for. Hence, there's a need to look for other source of data. And that's where open data came in. So the satellite data is an open data that is freely available and is accessible by all. And I use the satellite data on radiation. Please, next slide. I use the satellite data on radiation to validate this. Now, the satellite data on radiation was used because as a result of the 100 million people that the United Nations has projected that may suffer from food shortage, the agronomists and scientists alike want to see how best they could use radiation as an input parameters in crop models, because you know traditionally rainfall and sunshine are major components for photosynthesis. Now the ground station data was gotten from the Ghana Met Services, and the satellite data was obtained from the Satellite Application Facility for Climatic Services, or the UMERSAT. The satellite data, when on radiation, is measured, has a different unit, which is radiation per meter square. And that of the ground station data, what is available is sunshine hours. But these sunshine hours and radiation data cannot be used because they have different units. So there was a need to bring them under the same scale or bring them under the same level. And that was what the mathematical symbol over there or the mathematical formula over there was used to do. We use this formula alongside a package in R called Sierra to do the conversion and to have the standardized unit for both data sets. And the aim of this data was to compute some statistical metric alongside some statistical methods to validate the satellite data on radiation. Before the satellite data could be used, we needed to assess how well it is estimated when you compare it to the truth data or the ground station data. So what we did was that we will have to validate this, and upon validation, if we get to see that the satellite data is true compared to the ground station data, then we could go on to use it as input parameters in our crop models in order to improve crop yield and food security. Please, next slide. So based on the World Meteorological Organization definition of rainfall, or a rainy day and a sunny day, we did some computations, and the results over there on the slides indicate or shows to us that in the month of January, you see that both data sets, the red data or the red symbol on the graph stands for the radiation data set that was obtained from UMERSAT, and the SIS over there, which is the blue, also is for the ground station. Now, when you look at it, in the month of January, February, and March, the distance between both data sets was quite huge. But when you approach the month of April, May, June, and July, particularly in the month of August, you see that both lines are coming together, which shows that around the rainy season, both data sets are the same, or the satellite data estimates the ground station pretty well. Now, with this validation and with this in mind, we were very happy because this was a good result, which means that the satellite data could be used as input parameters in crop models to improve crop yields. Please, next slide. So according to the world definition, we did a computation, and based on that, we saw that the blue line, which was the satellite data, compared to the red line, the ground station data, were pretty close. Just as within the dry season, both data were further apart, but we were particularly interested in what happens in the rainy season. And based on our results, both data sets were completely very close. And there's a very big dip over there in the month of August, because in the August in Ghana is our peak month, or the peak rainy season, or the rainy month. And as a result, we are very happy. And the good news is that a team of researchers at the University of Ghana and a university in Germany are using these particular results to improve crop yields, particularly in Ghana here, to improve crop yield and food sustainability. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Evans. And you know, I always assumed maths was very boring. Now Evans has shown me that there's some color in maths. Thank you. Thank you, speakers. Let's give them a big hand as they take their seats, please. Thank you very much. Do you want to come back to your seats, please? Thank you. Oh, you like the stage. And I love it. Thank you very much. Let's give them a big hand of applause again. So I'm sure we get the slides from Katz and Jean and the AODC team. So I'm now pleased to invite our workshop leads. I'm going to call the following names. Rudy Mosca from Godan. Andrew, oh my God, I can't pronounce that name. Krujevich. Andrew, sorry, I've crucified you already. And then we have Dara Lipton from IREX and Bernard Sabiti. Please take the podium, please. You have lovely white seats there waiting for you. So as they take their seats, do you have copies of this? There's some changes here. So I think the health session will now be held in the main hall instead of committee room 2. So please take note of that if you're staying in here for the health session. I think the education session has been canceled. So the education session is the afternoon instead of the morning. So, so after the nice speeches from the different leads, we will now go to the different rooms in committee room 1, meeting room 2, and the main hall for the different sessions. And then we'll come back at 11:30 here after the coffee break. So I think they like my lovely dress and somebody wants to see me on stage. Okay, I'm walking towards the stage. So whilst I'm struggling, I will now invite Rudy Mosca. Is she here? Okay. First speech from her, please.
Hello, everyone. Sorry for being late. I'll talk to you a little bit about the agriculture track session that will be happening just now. What we'll do is we'll set up a series of roundtables that are thematic around agriculture. We'll talk about data ownership and rights, policy needs, data needs, a specific farmer perspective, capacity building, and ICT platforms as well. And so if you're interested in agriculture at all, please come, because we'll be talking about all the issues that have been surrounding this conference in the past 5 days. So thank you.
That was quick. Thank you for the nice 1-minute speech. So Rudy's session will be at committee room 1. Next is Andrew. Andrew, please, I don't want to kill your name again. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Very excited to be here. I will be co-facilitating this session with Kofi Asare of the Ghana Space Science Technology Institute and Patrick Lamptey of the Ghana Meteorological Agency. So we'll be exploring some of the specific and unique challenges to open data for climate and environmental uses. Climate and environmental data are inherently uncertain. In upholding a level of quality is one of the topics that we'll be discussing today. We'll also be talking about the governance structure of using, making available, and accessing climate and environmental data. So we really appreciate your feedback. Come join us in which room, madame? Which room are we in?
You are in meeting room 2.
Great. Meeting room 2. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I invite Dara Lipton from IREX.
Hello, good morning. I will be moderating a session called Amplifying the Subnational Data Revolution, Examples from Tanzania. And we're actually going to have representatives from 3 different programs talking to us about their experience trying to intervene in or enhance the ecosystem, the data ecosystem in Tanzania. So one is the Tanzania Data Lab, which is a data space, a sort of hub based in Dar es Salaam that provides training in data literacy and really fosters a sort of center in Dar es Salaam for data-focused conversations. The second is Data Zetu, which focuses on really amplifying conversations at the subnational level, so local institutions, local government, building conversations around how to incorporate data more meaningfully into their work. And the third is an innovation challenge. So looking at how do we foster creativity and innovation among individuals and institutions. So all of them are basically contributing to the broader data ecosystem in Tanzania. And so even though we're focused primarily on one country, we think that there's a lot of sort of relevant information and that the conversation would be really interesting no matter what country context you're working in. And what's interesting about this is, as we all know from this conference, we often participate in sessions that are sort of presentations, right? Someone stands in front of you or a panel of people are standing in front of you presenting. Alternatively, we also really benefit from the sort of side conversations and networking and conversations that we all have when we're at lunch or afterwards or sitting in these seats. And so what's unique about our session is that we're bringing in this World Cafe format. So we have some short presentations by our speakers, but primarily we're going to be focused on breaking into these group discussions where we really want to hear from you. So we're going to share some of the challenges and opportunities and experiences that we have in Tanzania, but we're very intrigued and interested in knowing what your individual experiences are and how we can sort of learn from each other. So I encourage you to come. We're going to be in meeting room 3. I hope to see you there.
Thank you. So last but not least is our health lead, Bernard Sabiti.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Since you look cold, I will tell you a story for 1 minute. I say I have 2, so a story for 1 minute and introducing my panelists for another minute. So I am from Uganda. My name is Bernard Sabiti. I work for development initiatives. And in Uganda, we got a lot of problems, a lot. One of those is electricity. We don't have enough. We never have enough. So power outages, or what we call load shedding, is a big problem. Is it the same thing in Ghana? So a few years ago, when Bill Clinton was still president, he visits Uganda, visits our president, and then during a state dinner held in his honor, power goes out. And then he was shocked and he asked his host, Mr. President, what's going on? And the president told him, no, don't worry, that's for security purposes. We wanted to make sure to see if we are ready. Then the next day, the host took Mr. Clinton to Kampala streets for a stroll, to show him around, and then the power went out again. And then Bill Clinton said, so what's the problem now? I see there's a lot of dark areas. And he told him, don't worry about that. Those are people who don't like light. So the next year, Bill Clinton returns the favor and invites our president to Washington, D.C. And he takes him out for a walk in D.C. And so as they are walking, the president sees a dark block, a block that was not lit. And he said, Mr. President, now I got you. You were laughing at me the other time. You Americans also have a power problem. You see that building? It's dark. And then Mr. Clinton said, Mr. President, if you look closely, that's the Ugandan embassy. And so, according to international law, that's Ugandan territory, man. Anyway, if you want to hear more of that, you better come to my session. So we are going to talk about health, and we have a very impressive, we assembled an impressive panel. We have Jean Holm, also known as Mama Data. She works with the city of Los Angeles as well. Yeah, that Los Angeles where Hollywood is. So if you've been looking for Will Smith's telephone number, you better come. We have Yema Thompson, of course, from Sierra Leone. We have two people from Facebook who are going to be telling us what Facebook is doing in terms of health issues. And then we have also a gentleman from Mali, Dr. Lai, who is doing amazing things on e-health, and several other people. So they showed me a smiley that wasn't smiling, which means my time is up. But it's in here, so better not leave. Thank you.
Bernard, you made my morning. Thank you. And I better not sit close to you because, there may be a power outage. But thank you so much. You've been a wonderful audience this morning. And there has been a little change. I love my coffee breaks because that's when I have time to actually gossip. But however, our coffee break is now 10 minutes. We've been asked to convene for coffee at 12 and then come back to the main hall at 10 minutes past 12. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Can we give them a big hand? And please go to meeting room 123 and stay in the main hall. Thank you.
So, my panelists, please find your way to the front. Yema Thompson, Shaya Nayak from Facebook, and your colleague Fatai Mazingira, if you are around. Dennis Irorere, Jim Holm, Dr. Usman Lai, and Dr. Ahamadu Diko. So if you could please find your way here and we get going. Please stay for the health session. I promise I won't tell another joke about Uganda. This is going to be serious business. So, please stay for the session. So if you would get closer, audience, fill the seats at the front so that we have that kind of intimacy, not the literal meaning of the word, but that closeness. You get what I mean. So if we could just come closer to our panelists, we want to reduce the gap between the panelists and the audience. So, yeah. So, panelists, please, if you would find your way up here.
first speaker. I hope I'm not.
Don't worry if you don't want, I won't make you the first speaker. So now I wanted to, the people that don't have slides to speak first, you know, as the other guy said their thing. Yeah. So, Yema, you sent me something. You want it projected?
Yeah, that's what I
Okay. Okay, great. So maybe we can start off with you, Chi, if you don't mind. Yeah, then we'll go with the Facebook people. And then, yeah. Okay. Is Dr. Osman here? Okay, so we actually want you now, another slight change. You can get a cup of coffee. Understandably, you are thirsty. So get a cup of coffee outside or tea, and then you come back in, and then we can start off, because we understand a few people actually are getting themselves coffee. So better catch a cup yourself, and then you come and we start. So if you could use 3 to 4 minutes to do that, or 5, and then we start off when most of the people are back. Thank you.